Welcome to the Teachers Need Teachers podcast, where we help new and beginning teachers navigate through those crazy first years of teaching so you can maintain your sanity and personal life. Here's your host, Kim Lapre.
Welcome to the Teachers Need Teachers podcast, a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kim Lapre, and this is the podcast for new and beginning teachers who don't want to just survive those first few years, but actually thrive. Today on episode 60, I want to talk to you about burnout. Now, there's definitely no shortage of articles, podcasts, books, or YouTube videos on this topic. And the reason is obvious. Teaching is hard. It requires long hours with little pay, so burnout is inevitable. Now, before I dive into this topic, I wanted to remind you about my end of the year Sanity Saver course. As we're getting closer to the end of the school year, it's even more important that we set it up properly so that we end on a high note and also set it up for when we come back to school. And that is the whole point of this course. I want you to be completely prepared for the whirlwind that is the end of the school year. Now, if you're a new teacher, you don't know what you don't know. And this course is going to help you know ahead of time what to anticipate so that you feel like you're in control, like you're on top of things, and you just aren't sitting there with all of these fires that you constantly have to put out because you didn't anticipate everything. Now, if you've been teaching for, 2 or more years, it's still really important to end the year right, because a lot of times we just, teach, maybe have finals, maybe have, assemblies and stuff, and then the kids go. And then there's that last day of school and you have all the stuff that you need to think about, like cleaning up, putting things away. And when you come back, you're kind of in a daze because you can't remember where you left off when the school year ended. There were things that you wanted to do differently this school year, but can't really remember them. So the course really helps set you up so that the year ends smoothly. You can enjoy your time with your students. But if you're someone who's a summer planner, maybe you like to spend a little bit of time looking at materials, going on Teachers Pay Teachers, or just rethinking what you're doing. If you end the year right, then you have a focus for the summer as well, so that when you do come back to school, you can go in knowing exactly what you're going to do, and you can feel confident going into that next school year. So I encourage you to just click on the link in the show notes or on the website and just take a look at it, and you'll see that the lessons in this course are very short. And the purpose of that is that you can watch them during your planning period, nutrition break, your lunch, and you can get these tips and strategies that are actionable without taking too much of your time.
Hi, I'm Jake Miller, host of the Educational Duct Tape Podcast, a proud member of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to right now. The opinions expressed are those of each individual host. Be sure to check out all of our other great podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com. And get ready, because the learning begins in 3, 2, 1.
As I mentioned in the introduction, there's a lot of content on teacher burnout, and that usually comes with some recommendations to help you get past it. And of course, so much of it is really, really good. Truth be told, I didn't really pay attention to it in the past because I wasn't personally experiencing burnout. Teaching was something that I couldn't possibly think of not doing. And especially after all the hard work that I put in to get where I am today. So some of us really feel like we're just born to teach and it's our passion. We can't imagine doing anything else. And that's pretty much always been me until this past school year. This was the first time that I'd been burnt out in my 17 years of teaching. And up until this point, I would always have so much going on in my life and in my career. I'd take on this school position. I'd be constantly coming up with new and innovative lessons. I'd be working on this other project, being a mentor, starting a blog and a business, starting a podcast. I mean, I just kept piling on the stuff. And to be honest with you guys, I was good at it. I mean, I'm good at juggling lots of different things. And if anything, I get bored if I don't have a lot going on. I thrived on being busy, and I loved problem solving and putting out fires. And especially with the problem solving part, I mean, it's always been my favorite because I'm pretty good at finding solutions. I can see many, many, many steps ahead, and I can anticipate the problems that are going to happen so that I can help anticipate them. And of course, being a beginning teacher mentor has definitely been a passion for me for a while. So after working my butt off the previous school year, meaning the 2017-2018 year, on blogging and starting a business, and then adding on a podcast, my brain just finally shut down. I started out this past school year just, oh my goodness, I was in a fog. I was completely unmotivated, constantly exhausted and tired. Of course, I was stressed out about everything, but I also didn't really care about what I used to care about. And it was very uncharacteristic of me. And because I was so used to doing so much and having people depend on me, I didn't want to admit that I might be burnt out. I just never thought that I would burn out because I was always doing something and I loved it. It was my thing. People were used to it, and I don't want to let anyone down. So a few months into this school year, I really realized that I was burnt out. I'd also taken on way too much without anyone asking me to do it. What was once a source of energy for me dragged me down and left me with dread. So I would zone out in PLC meetings, abandon any kind of long-term planning for the school year for myself because the school year just seemed so long. And in general, I was just unhappy. And it's important for me to stress that a lot of what I put on myself, nobody asked me to. I was making the conscious decision to try to do all the things all the time and do them really well because I wanted to help people. But that realization was really powerful because sometimes we think that we're burning out due to external forces when actually it's us. We're doing it to ourselves. So I definitely had thoughts about leaving the teaching profession. Not because I didn't like teaching anymore. I was always 100% for my students, and I was always in the moment with them, enjoying their company. So I wasn't hating it while I was there. I was just bored and also tired of the same thing. Now, luckily, I've managed to survive the school year without letting down my students, without letting down my family or my colleagues or my administration. On top of that, I've managed to put out a podcast episode every week. Now, I don't think you necessarily have to have the same situation that will create burnout, but you may already be feeling burnout at this point in your career, this early point in your career. So I wanted to share with you 5 things that I did this year to still be an effective and seemingly happy teacher while also dealing with my burnout. So first, I admitted to myself that I was burnt out. If you are a type A person, such as myself, that is not easy to do. We're perfectionists and we'll work ourselves into a grave, basically. But we have to be kind to ourselves and honest when we're feeling this way. Being self-aware of what was going on helped me assess the situation and figure out what I needed to do. Now, you need to realize that being burnt out does not equate with failure. Sometimes our negative self-talk convinces us that we should be able to handle all of this, but we can only do so much. And honestly, until you're further into your career, if you take on too much, you do all of it either in a mediocre or poor way. This year, the position of the drama teacher opened up, and one of my mentees who started second semester last school year was really excited about putting her hat in for it. I strongly cautioned against it because I knew that what the drama position entailed. I mean, we're talking lots of time spent after school prepping, planning, monitoring students while they create sets, evening performances. You know what I mean. So on top of grading essays and other assignments, she'd have to make time to be an effective drama teacher. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're a visual and performing arts teacher, you signed up for that and you know what you're getting yourself into. But for my mentee, who's also planning a wedding and still figuring out the whole teaching thing, I personally didn't think it was a good time to take on everything that being a drama teacher entailed. As a new teacher, you might feel like you have a lot to prove, and you do. But you should prove your dedication to being an effective teacher in the classroom rather than taking on extra duties that will suck up the little time that you have. More is not better in this case and will definitely lead to burnout. So second, I looked at everything I was doing in my life, meaning I looked at my day-to-day routines both in and out of school. This was really, really crucial because I had to play detective and determine what was causing so much dissatisfaction and distress. I mean, at this point, everything I was doing was by choice. I signed up to be a blended learning specialist. Nobody made me do that. I chose to start a podcast and put out weekly content even when I didn't have time. So I had to look at the things like that and ask myself, which of these are bringing me anxiety? Which ones felt like, they were actually having a positive impact? And which ones were just sucking up my time? So for example, I was going to the gym 3 times a week. Now, some of you are going to disagree with me on this, but I realized that I could get by with just 2. I'm not trying to lose weight, and I'm satisfied with how I am. So I decided that the 3rd day would serve me better by catching up on my sleep with a nap, spending time with my family, spending time with my friends. Sometimes I just spend a couple of hours by myself doing nothing school related and unwind. And getting those few hours back has helped me keep my sanity. Now, I know that for some of you, actually going to the gym helps you with burnout. And I think there was just so much anxiety around getting to that 3rd day because it would be Friday after school when I was exhausted, or, Saturday when it was really crowded. And I don't know, just the thought of that 3rd day created more stress for me than actually being stress relieving. So I found that the alternative was just to go twice a week and really put my all into that. And also on the other days, try to walk as much to not only unwind, but also to get some movement. When I realized that I was burnt out, I also reevaluated how I was going to structure my assignments. When you're burnt out, grading is even more of a chore than normal. I knew that I didn't have the same mental capacity for everything like I did before. I mean, when you feel this way, you really, really don't feel like doing much of anything, especially grading. So I gave shorter and more targeted assignments, and I didn't grade all of them in the traditional sense of grading. As I've mentioned before, like in episode 32 about tackling grading when you're way behind, I would walk around and look at their work in real time and give them feedback then. I only collected assignments after they had practiced a skill, and a lot of times those would only be a paragraph long, just long enough so that I can see them demonstrate that skill. So along those lines, the 3rd thing I did was stop creating new material. Now, I would always be inspired by some new and engaging way to teach an old concept. I would just get an idea out of nowhere, and I would just create a unit on the spot. So I was always making lessons and other units. And this past year, I just couldn't think of anything new. Also, I was unmotivated. So I just used the stuff that I've created before that I knew worked. And it felt really strange at first, but it was actually a relief. Now, you don't have this option if you're just starting out, but in your 2nd year of teaching, if you're feeling burnt out, you could use the same lessons from the 1st year and just refine them. You could look at your plan book from the previous year, maybe tweak some of your pacing if necessary, and just teach it all again, but better. If you're brand new and you don't have much to go on, then ask your colleagues for lessons. Even if they're not exactly what you had in mind, just try them. if they are vetted by someone more experienced, you really don't have anything to lose by using them in your class. Plus, you can save so much time on creating new stuff yourself that very well may not work, and that frustration could lead to even more burnout. The fourth thing I did was I scaled way back on my business and blogging part. So I think that part of my mental shutdown involved me feeling like a failure for my business, which is not a feeling that I'm accustomed to. So instead, I decided to just admit that it was only a year. I mean, anytime you try something new, like, I don't know, teaching, it's really hard and you're not going to be good right away, which is not something that I like to admit because I'm used to being good at what I do. And I decided to stop worrying about it and obsessing about it and just kind of take a step back. I was trying to force it too much, so I took a step back. And instead, I put just enough energy into my podcast so that I could keep spreading the word and helping new teachers like yourself. And strangely enough, podcasting is a lot easier than blogging. So this is going to apply to those of you who are trying to set up teachers pay teacher shops. I see a lot of new teachers trying to start little side hustles while they're also figuring out teaching. And I mean, I get it. I started one too. You want some extra cash. You want, 10,000 followers on Instagram and stuff like that. But if you're mentally in the weeds and barely making it through, do not add on more to your plate, like creating pretty worksheets and trying to market them. And the fifth and final thing I did was go to therapy. I have a wonderful therapist who I see virtually, so it's kind of like Skyping or FaceTiming. And she helps me work through the stresses that I was working out myself. I mean, yes, we can commiserate with our colleagues who totally get what we're going through. But have you ever noticed that when you talk about an issue with a colleague, maybe about a student or a lesson or unfair administrators, they chime in with their own issues? I mean, this is awesome, don't get me wrong, and it helps us get through the day. But I needed someone to just listen, to help me see my own self-sabotaging patterns and give me strategies on how to get past my rut. I needed someone who could both validate my feelings while showing me how I can train myself to handle situations in a more productive way. Now, I'm really glad that mental health has become more accepted in society. There was definitely a stigma about it before, and seeing a therapist meant that you were crazy or you were weak. And quite honestly, it's made me see my unhealthy patterns and cut through the crappy excuses I make for myself. It can also help you feel really heard during a time in your career when you feel like you don't have much to say in the world of teaching. And I'm lucky to have insurance that covers these visits minus a $10 copay. And I'd honestly look into your benefits and see what services are covered if you choose to see a therapist as well. So where am I at now? I don't feel burnt out anymore, mainly because I'm not taking on anything that's burning me out. It's that simple. I still wonder if my talents and experience could be utilized somewhere else. I don't know. I can't help but wonder, but I haven't been motivated enough to really pursue that. And as I've mentioned these past few weeks on the podcast, I created an end-of-the-year Sanity Saver course for you. And you guys, I personally go through these steps at the end of every year. And this has helped me in particular this year since I'm not as motivated as previous years. I mean, no, I'm not burnt out right now, but I still don't feel like doing anything. However, going through the course really helps. I'm just going through the steps. I'm completing the different tasks and then moving on to the next. And because I don't get out until the second week of June, doing this early in May ensures that I can go at a leisurely pace and not stress myself out rather than procrastinating and having to get it all done. And you know what? I am still loving doing this podcast. I stay motivated from the wonderful emails and feedback on Apple Podcasts that you guys leave for me, as well as the emails from those of you that are listeners and you tell me about how you're doing as a teacher. You tell me how the podcast has been helping you. And all of that, it really makes me emotional because sometimes I feel like I'm talking into the void. Sometimes I wonder if people are actually listening, and why would people want to listen to me? I'm just a teacher like everybody else out there. So when I hear from you, it really it warms my heart and it motivates me to keep on just getting these thoughts out of my brain and also sharing every teaching experience and tip and hack that I can give to you. I just really want to pay it forward. If you're still a new teacher and you're feeling burnt out, there's so much that you can still do to get past it without quitting. You may be thinking right now, I don't know if this is for me. I want to quit. I promise you, it's going to get easier. And I know that sounds so cliche and it may be unbelievable because the school year has been so hard for you. But it's one of those things where, like me and my business, you just have to scale back. You have to step back a little bit and not quit. You have to step back and take a look and reevaluate and then push forward. Maybe follow some of the stuff that I just suggested, or maybe you can find a podcast or a blog on teacher burnout so that you can be reassured that you're not the only one, and schedule more time for yourself. Take on less and ditch the guilt. I promise you can get past this. You just have to be strategic about it. So whether you're feeling burnout now or maybe you'll feel it in the future, I hope that this episode helped you. It wasn't easy talking about this or admitting that after all of this time, I'm almost on my 18th year. Teaching isn't always easy. And it's actually not the teaching part. It's just, my head. It's me and my head and taking on too much. And, this is a little bit of a cautionary tale for some of you guys, but also just it's okay. You're going to get past this. So I hope that you found this helpful. I would love to hear from you if you're already feeling burnt out, or if you think you might be burnt out and you just want to chat about it. So you can email me at kim@teachersneedteachers.com. And don't forget that you can help prevent end of the year burnout with the end of the year Sanity Saver course. The link is in the show notes, or you can go to teachersneedteachers.com/EOTY. Thank you so much, you guys, for being here today. I hope you have a fabulous week.
Thanks for listening to the Teachers Need Teachers podcast. Love this episode? Head over to Apple Podcast or Google Play to subscribe, rate, and leave a review.